It was one of those Thursday nights in early November cool. Enough that people wore light jackets, but not quite winter yet, the kind where the sky looks washed out gray by 7 and streetlights flicker on like tired eyes, opening one by one. Inside the old Riverview Community Theater, the air smelled like popcorn, floor wax, and the faint sweetness of someone's vanilla body spray. Folding chairs had been set up in crooked rows, the kind of setup that says, "We're not fancy, but we're trying." Faded banner hung above the stage. Open mic and oddities night, all welcome seriously. This wasn't Broadway. It wasn't even local newsworthy. Lest your idea of news included a guy who could juggle 3 rubber chickens and a pineapple, he dropped the pineapple. Twice. Every month, the theater hosted this little event. And every month, about 100 folks showed up. Retirees looking for something to do. College students killing time before a late shift. Parents whose kids were performing. And a few regulars who came just to heckle good-naturedly. Mostly, backstagerily, just a narrow hallway with a crooked mirror and a box labeled "Props Do Not Eat." The buzz was light, relaxed. A teenager in a superhero t-shirt practiced card tricks, fumbling the fan flip. A woman in her 50s hummed softly while tuning a ukulele that had a sticker on it that read, "This belongs to Barb, not you." A few feet away, near the water cooler that only ever gave out lukewarm water, stood a man no one seemed to know. He wasn't young. His hair was mostly gray, thinning at the crown, and he wore the kind of clothes that looked like they'd been chosen for comfort. Not style brown corduroy pants with a faint crease down each leg, a soft blue sweater with one tiny hole near the cuff, and loafers that had seen better days but were polished just enough to show he cared. He carried a leather case over one shoulder, old, worn smooth at the edges.
Nice.
The kind of thing you'd find in a thrift store and assume held sheet music, or maybe old tax files. He didn't talk much. When someone smiled at him, he gave a small nod, polite but quiet, like he was used to being in the background, the MC for the evening, yeah. Friendly guy named Dave, who ran the theater's after-school drama program, checked his clipboard. "Okay, we've got magic, 3 poets, a guy who says he can whistle Bohemian Rhapsody in one breath, which I doubted. Elias, piano." "That's you?" The man nodded. "That's me." His voice was calm, low but clear. Not she just. Still. Like a lake on a windless morning, Dave scanned the sheet again. No song title listed. "Just piano, maybe?" He chuckled. "You keeping us guessing?" A faint smile touched the man's lips. "Something like that." "Cool, cool," Dave said, making a little note. "We usually like to give folks a heads-up funny intro, silly facts so the crowd warms up to 'em. You got a fun fact? Secret talent. Once knew a famous person? Anything." The man hesitated. Then, softly, "I once fixed a stuck door in the rain with a butter knife and a rubber band." Dave blinked, then laughed out unkindly. "That's actually kind of impressive. Okay, we'll go with that." He moved on, and the Manny alias stepped aside, letting a girl with glitter in her hair rush past to tune her guitar. He set the leather case down gently near a stack of empty prop crates and pulled out a folded handkerchief from his pocket. Not to wipe his brow, not to sneeze into. He just held it, fingers tracing the edge, like it was something familiar and precious. Out in the audience, people munched on popcorn, chatted, scrolled on their phones. A couple in the second row shared a bag of gummy worms. A man near the back leaned over to his friend and whispered, "Think the chicken juggler's coming back?" I missed the first drop. No one was thinking about Elias. Not yet. When the show started, it moved at the easy pace of community theater, lightly awkward, full of heart. A nervous high school kid read a poem about his dog. It was sweet, if a little long. A woman in sequins did a magic trick involving a deck of cards and a volunteer's wedding. Everyone gasped politely when the ring reappeared in a teacup. Then came the whistle guy. He made it through Mama. Just killed a man before wheezing, turning red. And giving up to generous laughter and applause, the crowd was happy, comfortable, expecting the usual harmless fun. A few groans, a couple of genuine awes, and a night that would be forgotten by breakfast. Then Dave stepped back up. Clipboard tucked under his arm, grin in place. All right, folks. Next up, we've got someone new tonight. Real quiet fella. Didn't give us much to go on, but he says he plays piano maybe. Pause for a beat, letting the chuckles rise. Also, fun fact, he once fixed a stuck door in the rain with a butter knife and a rubber band. He shook his head, smiling. I don't know how, but I respect it. Let's give a warm Riverview welcome to Elias. Polite clapping. A few whistles. Some people leaned in, curious. Most relaxed back, ready for something gentle. Maybe a little off-key, someone's grandpa playing Moon River. It's one finger. Elias walked on stage slowly, not with hesitation, but with the unhurried pace of someone who didn't need to rush. The spotlight, slightly dusty and buzzing faintly, caught the silver in his hair. He didn't wave, didn't smile at the crowd. He just walked to the piano, a modest upright, donated years ago by a retiring music teacher. Its wood-scratched but well-kept hand set his leather case on top. A murmur rose. Is he tuning it? Think he needs help getting the bench right? Ah, bless his heart. He adjusted the bench, first too high, then a little lower, settling in with a soft sigh. He opened the case. Not with drama. Just a simple lift of the latch. Inside wasn't sheet music. It was a small framed photograph, black and white, slightly faded at the corners. A young woman smiling, head tilted, eyes bright like she knew a beautiful secret. He took it out and placed it gently on the piano lid, just to the left of the keys. Then he unfolded the handkerchief and laid it beneath the frame. Like a tiny altar cloth, someone in the front row whispered, "Is that his wife?" He didn't look up, just took a slow breath, lowered his hands over the keys, and then he began, not with a flourish, not with a bang, just a single note, soft, clear, like a drop of water falling into a still pond. Then another, and another. A melody unfolded, slow, tender, heartbreakingly familiar to anyone who'd ever felt longing or loss or love that didn't last. The kind of music that doesn't demand your attention, it just takes it gently. Like a hand reaching out in the dark, the chatter stopped. The man eating popcorn froze. Colonel halfway to his mouth, the couple sharing gummy worms, let the bag rest in their laps. Even Dave, waiting in the wings with his clipboard, frozepin hovering midair, his smile faded. His shoulders dropped. He wasn't grinning anymore. He was listening, because this wasn't Moon River. This was in TFR Elise simplified for beginners. This was something else entirely. The left hand moved in deep, rolling chords, rich and resonant, filling the room like a slow tide. The right hand danced above them, light and aching. Each note placed with such care it felt like he was speaking directly to each person in the room. This was music that had lived in someone's bones for a long, long time. Music that had been carried through years of silence. A woman 3 rows back, mid-40s, wearing a floral scarf, blinked fast, then pressed the back of her hand to her mouth. A college student lowered his phone. Not to record, just to be there. The teenager who'd been texting the whole time now sat perfectly still, eyes wide. Fingers curled around the edge of his seat, like he was afraid the music might slip away if he moved. No one whispered. No one shifted. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. This was the second movement of Rachmaninoff's second piano concerto, the Adagio Sassonuto, one of the most beautiful, sorrowful, hopeful pieces ever written. And he wasn't playing an arrangement. He wasn't simplifying it for a small piano or a casual crowd. He was playing it fully, faithfully, every nuance intact, the swells, the silences, the aching pauses between phrases that somehow said more than sound ever could, and yet he wasn't showing off. There was no flash, no pounding fists on the keys for effect. His movements were economical, precise, deeply felt. Like he wasn't performing for them. He was just remembering, sharing something he'd kept safe for decades. The piano wasn't perfect. A few keys had a slightly softer touch. One pedal squeaked faintly on the downbeat, But none of that mattered, because the music, the feeling was flawless. It wrapped around the room like smoke, thick and warm and impossible to ignore. Halfway through, a little girl, maybe 7, sitting on her dad's lap near the aisle, tugged his sleeve. "Daddy," she whispered, just loud enough for the row to hear. "Why does it sound like crying?" "But nice?" Her father didn't answer right away. He just squeezed her a little tighter and nodded, eyes glistening. Backstage, the ukulele player Barb had stopped tuning. She stood just behind the curtain, arms crossed, tears running down her cheeks, silent and steady. She didn't wipe them away. Elias never looked up. His eyes were half closed, focused inward, hands moving like they remembered a path they hadn't walked in years, but the map was still there, deep in the muscle, in the memory. Every time the melody rose, hopeful yearning, you could see his shoulders lift just slightly. Every time it sank back into sorrow, he leaned in, as if bearing the weight of it willingly. And still, no one knew who he was. Not really. They knew he was older, quiet, carried a worn leather case, had a photo of a woman he clearly loved. But they didn't know about the years, decades, really, of early mornings before work, sitting at a secondhand keyboard in a basement apartment, headphones on so as not to wake the neighbors. They didn't know about the thick notebooks filled with penciled transcriptions, full orchestral scores rewritten for solo piano, page after page, line after line, in neat, careful script. They didn't know about the hands, the left one, in particular, that sometimes ached in the cold, that had healed crooked after an accident long ago, that had been told, "You'll never play professionally again." They didn't know he'd once stood on stages far grander than this, one-wood floors gleaming, velvet curtains, audiences in evening wear beef, for life took a sharp turn and the music got folded away, like a letter tucked into a drawer and forgotten, but never thrown out. All they knew, the entire room, holding its collective breath, was that something rare was happening, something real, something true. The music built slowly, like a storm gathering on the horizon, not violent but deep, immense. The chords grew richer, the rhythm steadied, and then just as the tension reached its peak, he pulled back. Just a little. Let the silence hang for a heartbeat too. And in that silence, something shifted, not just in the room, in the people. Because up until that moment, they'd come expecting to be amused, to laugh at the odd, the earnest, the slightly offbeat. They'd come to watch, not to feel. But now they were no longer an audience. They were witnesses. The final phrases came gentle, resolving like a hand resting on a shoulder after a long cry. One last soft chord, then silence. Elias lowered his hands, let them rest on his knees, bowed his head just slightly, not in triumph, not in pride, in gratitude for the music, for the moment, for the woman in the photo. Still smiling beside him on the piano lid, no one moved, no one clapped. For 3 full seconds, maybe. 4, the room stayed perfectly, profoundly still, like the world had paused to catch its breath. Then a single person stood up, then another, then the whole room, every single person rose to their feet. Not out of pity, not out of politeness, out of awe, out of something deeper than words. The applause didn't start loud. It began softly, hands clapping slowly, reverently, then built, wave after wave, until it filled the room, spilled into the hallway, echoed off the brick walls outside. People were crying, smiling, shaking their heads in wonder. Dave walked on stage, not with his usual bounce, but slowly, almost solemnly. He didn't grab the mic right away, just stood beside the piano, looking at Elias, then at the photo, then back at the man. His voice, when he finally spoke into the mic, was thick. He paused, swallowed. Who are you?" Elias looked up, not at the crowd, not at the lights, at Dave. And for the first time all night, he smiled. Small, quiet, but real. Like sunshine breaking through clouds after a long rain. Just someone, he said softly, who never forgot how to listen. And in that moment, before the cameras, before the videos, before the world would try to label him, package him, explain him, there was only this: a man, a piano, a memory, and a room full of strangers. Suddenly connected by something they couldn't name but would never forget. The applause didn't stop. Not right away. It rolled through the little theater like wind through tall grass, rising, falling, rising again, each wave louder, longer, deeper than the last. People weren't just clapping. They were stomping feet, whistling. Some shouted things like "thank you" or "again." Not because they wanted more music, not yet, but because they needed to say something, anything, to break the spell without shattering it. Elias stayed seated, hands resting on his knees, head still slightly bowed. He didn't soak it in like a performer used to standing ovations. He just let it wash over him. Like rain after a long drought, welcome, necessary. Almost too much to take in all at once. Dave stood beside the piano, mic in hand, blinking fast. He'd hosted these nights for 7 years. He'd seen a man recite the Raven while balancing a spoon on his nose. He'd watched a 92-year-old tap dance to Putting on the Ritz. But this quiet man, music that felt like it came from somewhere older than the building, older than the town. This was different. It wasn't entertainment. It was a gift. And Dave knew, deep in his gut, that he was holding something fragile, something sacred. He leaned into the mic, voice softer now, almost reverent. "Folks, I think we all just witnessed something." He paused, searching for the right word. Something rare. A woman near the front wiped her eyes with the back of her wrist and nodded. Hard dot. Dave turned to Elias again. "Would you? Do you mind if folks ask a question? Just one or two?" Elias looked up, nodded once. A small gesture. Enough hands shot up, not wildly, not like kids in a classroom, but gently, like people asking permission to step into a quiet room. Dave pointed to a man in his 60s, silver hair, wearing a flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up. "Sir?" The man stood slowly. His voice was steady, but his eyes were wet. "That piece. I heard it once. Long time ago, my wife and I. We danced to an orchestral version back when we were first married. In our living room. Just the two of us, lights off, record player spinning." He swallowed. "She's gone now. 5 years. He didn't say more. Didn't need to. Everyone in the room understood. Elias looked at him not with pity, but with recognition. Like he'd been there too. He gave a small nod. "It's a good piece for remembering," he said simply. Someone else called out softly, almost shyly from the back. "How long have you been playing?" Elias didn't answer right away. His fingers brushed the edge of the piano bench, just once. "Since I was 6, he said, "but not like this. Not in public. Not for a long time. That was all. No explanation. No drama. Just truth offered plain." A college student near the aisle pulled out her phone not to scroll, but to open her notes app. She typed quickly. Not about skill. About love. About waiting backstage. Theater's part-time intern, a quiet kid named Mateo, who usually just handled lights and swept floors, pressed record the second the first note sounded. The video was already uploading. He didn't think about views or virality. He just knew people need to hear this. The applause had settled now into a low hum of conversation, people turning to strangers, hugging friends, wiping cheeks, laughing in that shaky way people do when they've been moved past words. A little girl walked up to the stage, clutching a drawing she'd made during the magic act, a scribbly piano with rainbow keys. She held it out. Elias saw her, leaned down, took it with both hands, and said, "Thank you. This is beautiful." He tucked it carefully into the leather case beside the photograph. Dave finally stepped back to the mic. "All right, friends. We'll take a 15-minute intermission. Grab some water. Hug someone. Breathe." He grinned, but it was wobbly. "And thank you, Elias. Truly." As the house lights rose, the crowd didn't rush for the lobby. They lingered. Some stood near the stage, as if hoping Elias might play just one more phrase. Others formed small circles, talking in low voices about the music, yes, but also about things they hadn't thought of in years. A parent's lullaby. A song from a first date, a melody hummed while rocking a baby to sleep. Music, it turned out, wasn't just sound. It was time travel. Elias stayed at the piano. He didn't flee backstage, didn't hide. He just sat, fingers resting lightly on the keys, no playing. Just feeling the smooth ivory under his fingertips, like greeting an old friend after a long separation. A woman approached, mid-40s, wearing scrubs under her coat, hair pulled back in a messy bun. She looked tired, the kind of tired that comes from 12-hour shifts and worrying about things money can't fix. She stopped a few feet away, hands tucked in her pockets. "Can I ask something?" Elias looked up, nodded. "Double quotes, my son," she said, voice dropping. "He's 10. Wants to learn piano? We signed him up for lessons last year. Then, well, times got tight. Had to stop." She swallowed. "He still sits at the keyboard app on my phone every night. Tries to figure out songs by ear. Says it makes the house feel lighter." She paused. "How do you keep going when no one's listening?" Elias was quiet for a long moment, not thinking, just feeling his way to the answer. "You don't play for the crowd," he said finally. "You play for the music. It lives in you. If you stop feeding it, it doesn't die, but it gets quieter, harder to hear." He glanced at the photo on the lid. "Some days, you play for someone who can't hear it anymore. Some days you play just to prove to yourself that the love's still there." The woman nodded, fast. Looked down, then back up, eyes bright. "Thank you," she whispered. Dan walked away before her voice could break. Back in the lobby. The usual snack table popcorn, bottled water, store-bought cookies had become a kind of shrine. People weren't just grabbing snacks. They were leaving things. A handwritten note. "This helped me remember how to feel." A smooth river stone placed beside the cookie tray. A business card with a single sentence scribbled on the back. "Call me. We have a piano no one's playing." Dave found Elias finally, sipping water from a paper cup near the coat rack. "You okay?" Elias nodded. "Just full, yeah," Dave said, leaning against the wall. "Me too." He hesitated. "Listen, I know this isn't why you came tonight, but would you consider doing it again? Not here. Somewhere bigger. A real hall. We could." Elias held up a hand, gently. "Let's just get through tonight first." Dave nodded. Understood. The second half of the show was supposed to be more oddities, more poems, more jokes, the chicken juggler's redemption arc. But when Dave stepped back on stage after intermission, he looked out at the crowd still buzzing, still tender, and made a decision. "Okay," he said into the mic, smiling. "So, we had a little detour tonight. A beautiful one." He looked toward the piano. "And I know what you're all thinking." A ripple of laughter. Hopeful, he turned. "Elias, if you're willing, the stage is yours. As long as you'd like." No one booed. No one groaned. They just waited, quiet, expectant, like children at bedtime, hoping for one more story. Elias stood, walked back to the piano. Didn't sit right away. Just stood beside it, hand resting on the wood as if grounding himself. Then he looked out, not at the crowd, not really, but through them. It's like he was seeing something beyond the walls, and he began again, not with something flashy. Not with thunder. He chose Claire de Lune, Debussy. Gentle, moonlit, like walking through an empty garden at midnight, remembering someone you loved. This time, the room didn't just go quiet. It leaned in. Shoulders touched. Hands found other hand spouses, friends, strangers sitting side by side. A man in the third row closed his eyes and mouthed the melody. Softly, like a prayer he'd forgotten, but his body still knew. The music flowed rippling, shimmering, achingly tender. Elias's hands moved with a kind of quiet authority, now not showy, but sure. Every note had weight. Every pause had meaning. He wasn't just playing the piece. He was living it. Halfway through, a memory surfaced not for the audience, but for him. A memory he hadn't visited in years. Rain on a window. A small apartment. A single lamp glowing on a side table. The smell of old books and tea going cold, and her, the woman in the photo, sitting cross-legged on the floor, head resting against the piano, eyes closed, listening, not watching his hands. Not judging, just receiving. Like the music was a language only they shared. He'd played this piece for her the night before. Before the accident, the night before everything changed, his fingers didn't falter. But something in his chest did a soft, deep ache, like a door opening after years of rust. He let it in. Didn't push it away. Played through it. Because that was the thing no one told you about grief. It didn't vanish. You just learned to carry it. And sometimes the weight of it became part of the music. Made it deeper, truer when the final notes faded soft. Like footsteps disappearing down a hall with a silence. This time was different. Fuller, warmer, like the room itself was holding its breath out of respect. Then, no standing ovation. No roaring. Just a long, slow wave of clapping, softer, deeper, the kind of applause that says, I see you. I hear you. Thank you for trusting us with this. Elias stood, bowed not deeply, but sincerely. Then he carefully lifted the photograph, wiped a speck of dust from the glass with his thumb, and placed it back in the case as he closed the lid. A voice called out quiet, young, from the front row. Why that song? He turned. It was the little girl again, the one who'd drawn the rainbow piano. She stood beside her dad, clutching his hand. Looking up at Elias like he held the answers to everything, he knelt slowly. Knees cracking just a little in met her at eye level, because he said, voice warm, sometimes the world feels loud and hard. And this song? It's like a quiet place. You can go inside yourself. A safe room, where nothing can hurt you. Where love still lives even if the person's gone. She thought about that, then nodded, serious. Like my grandma's kitchen? Elias smiled. This time, exactly like that. After the show, no one left quickly. People milled around, reluctant to break the spell. Some approached Elias not. For autographs he didn't have any, but just to say thank you. To shake his hand. To tell a tiny piece of their own story. A retired teacher said, I taught music for 30 years. Heard thousands of students tonight. Tonight reminded me why I started. A teenager, hoodie pulled low, mumbled, I quit guitar last year. Said it was stupid. Think I'm gonna dig it out this weekend. Even the chicken juggler came over, holding one rubber chicken like an offering. Dude, he said, that was... Wow. Seriously. Elias just nodded, accepted the thanks like they were fragile things. Dave handed him an envelope, small, white. The usual honorarium, he said. It's not much. $20 and 2 cookies. Elias took it. More than enough. Then as he zipped up his coat, he paused. Looked around the nearly empty theater, the chairs still in crooked rows, the spotlight now off. The stage bare, except for the piano and one forgotten glitter hair clip. You know, he said quietly, I almost didn't come tonight. Dave raised an eyebrow. Why not? Elias zipped his coat the rest of the way. Thought no one would care. Thought maybe the music had gone stale. Like old bread. Smiled faintly. Turns out it just needed air. They walked out together into the cool night. The parking lot was nearly empty. A street lamp flickered above Elias's old sedan Dusty, dented on one fender, but clean inside. Parked beside it, a sleek black SUV with tinted windows. A man in a dark suit stood beside it. Not scary, not threatening, just present. He held a business card between 2 fingers. Mr. Morrow? Elias stopped. Didn't tense. Just waited. My name's Carl. I'm with a small classical label out of Chicago. I was passing through. Stopped for gas. Saw the marquee open mic and oddities, thought it'd be a laugh. He paused. Smiled. Just a little. Best laugh I never had. He offered the card. We'd love to talk. No pressure. Just coffee. Tomorrow, if you're free. Elias took the card. Didn't look at it. Just held it in his palm like it might dissolve. Thank you, he said. But I don't know if I'm what you're looking for. Carl nodded. Maybe not. But tonight, that wasn't just playing. That was telling. And the world. The world needs more truth-tellers. He got into his car. Drove off without another word. Elias stood there for a long time, card in one hand, leather case in the other. The night air was cool on his face. He looked up. The sky had cleared. Stars faint, but there. Back inside the theater, Dave stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching him. He didn't call out, just waited. Finally, Elias turned. Walked back toward the building. You heading home? Dave asked. Elias shook his head. Not yet. He went back inside, not to the stage, but to the tiny practice room down the hall. The one with the out-of-tune upright and the stack of donated sheet music. He set his case down, opened it, took out the photograph, and placed it on top of the piano. Then he sat and he played. Not for anyone. Not for cameras or contracts or crowds. Just for himself. Just for her. Just the quiet joy of fingers finding their way home, note by note. Breath by breath, after a very, very long time away. Outside, Dave closed the theater door softly. Didn't go in. Just stood in the hallway for a while, listening to the music drift under the door, gentle, steady, alive like a heart remembering how to beat. Morning came soft, that Friday gray light seeping through thin curtains. Birds tentative in the trees, the kind of dawn that feels like the world is still rubbing its eyes. Elias woke not to an alarm but to silence. The kind that settles after something big has passed, like the quiet after snowfall, or after a long-held breath is finally released. He lay still for a long time, hands resting on the quilt his mother had stitched 40 years ago. Threadbare now, but still warm. His left hand ached a little, the old injury, whispering back in the cold. He flexed his fingers slowly. Each one answered, stiff but willing. Like old friends showing up, even if they're running a little late. In the kitchen, the coffee maker gurgled. He poured a cup, black, and stood at the window. Looking out at the small backyard patchy grass, a bird feeder swaying in the breeze, the old oak he'd planted the year he moved in. Nothing fancy, just home. His phone sat on the counter. Screen dark. He didn't check it. Not yet. Instead, he walked to the closet, pulled out a box from the very back, cardboard taped shut, labeled in pencil, sheet music, do not toss. He hadn't opened it in over a decade. Sat on the floor, cross-legged like he used to, and cut the tape with a butter knife, the same one, maybe, that had once freed a stuck door in the rain. Inside, stacks of handwritten scores. Pages yellowed at the edges, bound with rubber bands gone brittle. Full concertos transcribed by hand, orchestral parts condensed for solo piano, margins filled with tiny notes in pencil, left hand lighter here. Pause, let it breathe. This is where she cried last time. He ran a finger over one page. Rachmaninoff, the same piece. Dated October 12, 1987, 2 days before the accident. He didn't cry. Just closed his eyes. Felt the weight of years, not heavy exactly, but present. Like carrying a stone in your pocket. You forget it's there until you reach in and feel it smooth. Cool surface, then the phone buzzed. Just once he picked it up. No missed calls, but one notification. A video. Posted from the Riverview Theater's unofficial Instagram page. Caption, you came for oddities. You stayed for this? He didn't play it. Instead, he put the phone face down. Finished his coffee. But the world, it turned out, wasn't waiting for him to be ready. By 10 a.m., the calls began. First, the local paper, just a quick quote. The community's talking. Then a radio station, we'd love you live at noon. 5 minutes. Just say how you feel. Then, strangely, a high school music teacher from 50 miles away, my students, saw the clip. They haven't stopped talking. Could you? Maybe say one thing to kids who think it's too late to start. Elias didn't say yes. Didn't say no. He just listened. Took notes in the same small notebook he used for grocery list segs. Milk, call Mrs. G about furnace, radio. Maybe at noon he drove to the hardware store not for interviews, but for sandpaper. The piano bench at home had a rough spot. Splintered wood. He'd been meaning to fix it. The moment he walked in, the shop bell. Jingle Dan's silence fell. 3 guys by the paint aisle turned. The cashier paused, rag in hand. A teenager stacking light bulbs froze mid-reach, then smiles. Oh, quiet waves. Hey, the cashier said, voice warm. We saw it. My wife, she played it twice this morning. Cried both times. Pushed a small box across the counter. On the house. Extra fine grit. For smoothing things out, Elias took it. Thank you, the man said. Thank you. Outside. A woman walking her dog stopped as he passed. My brother's in the hospital, she said. No preamble, like they'd been mid-conversation. He's been quiet lately. Withdrawn. I played him the recording last night. First time he smiled in weeks. She touched his arm, just for a second. Whatever that was, it matters. He got in his car. Sat with the engine off. It wasn't fame. It wasn't viral stardom, that loud, flashing thing that burns bright and fast. This was different, slower, deeper, like ripples from a single stone, spreading outward, touching shores he'd never seen. Back home, he finally played the video. It wasn't high quality, shaky, slightly out of focus in places. The lighting was harsh. You could hear someone cough in the third row. But the sound, even through phone speakers, was clear. Pure. He watched himself walk on stage. Saw the hesitation in his step. Saw the way he placed the photo. Saw the moment his hands touched the keys and how the room almost instantly changed. His own face on screen looked tired, peaceful, like a man who'd finally stopped. Running, he closed the video, didn't watch it again, but he left the phone open on the table. By late afternoon, emails arrived. Not from record labels, though a few had come. Glossy promises wrapped in legal language, but from people. A letter from a woman in Oregon. My husband has early dementia. He doesn't remember our anniversary, our kids' names sometimes. But last night, when your music came on the radio, he sat up, sang a few words off-key, but smiling. Held my hand like he used to. Thank you for giving me back 5 minutes of him. A voice note from a teenager in Texas. Recorded in a school bathroom, you could hear the hum of fluorescent lights. I got bullied all week. For liking classical. For practicing violin at lunch. Today I played your clip in homeroom. Didn't say anything. Just hit play. When it ended, the guy who called me orchestra nerd gave me a high five. Said, dude, that was fire, and 1 email short. No subject line. You played the second movement like you knew what it cost to hope. I do too. Thank you for not pretending it's easy. Elias printed that one. Taped it to the fridge beside the grocery list. That evening, drove not to the theater, not to a studio, but to the public library. He hadn't been inside in years. The place smelled the same. Old paper, lemon cleaner. The faint sweetness of the children's story hour cookies still lingering in the air. He walked past the fiction section, past the computers where students typed essays, and stopped at the far corner of the music archives. A single shelf, tucked beside local history. Dusty, slightly forgotten, he ran his fingers along the spines. Bach, Beethoven, Chopin. Then Rachmaninoff, complete works. He pulled it out. Checked it. Walked to the front desk. The librarian, a woman with silver braids and glasses on, a beaded chains, mild. Back for more? Elias blinked. Sorry? She tapped the screen. Your card. You checked out this exact volume. 32 years ago. 2 days before it was due, you returned it. Never late once. She looked up. Really looked at him. You're him, aren't you? From last night. He nodded. She didn't gush. Didn't ask for a selfie? Just slid the book across the counter. Stamped it due. December 12th, 2025. Anne said, keep it as long as you need. Some books. They wait for the right hands. He walked out into the cool dusk, the book tucked under his arm like old news at home. He made soup vegetable, simple, and ate at the kitchen table. The phone buzzed again. A text from Dave. Carl from the label is back. Wants to meet tomorrow? Coffee? No pressure. Says he brought sheet music to show you, not contracts. Music, Elias typed. Okay, then deleted it. Typed, let me think. Then deleted that too. Finally, tell him I'll be at the park bench near the willow tree. 10 a.m. if he comes, we'll talk. If not, no harm sent. He didn't go to the piano that night. Instead, he sat on the porch, listened to the crickets, to the distant hum of a neighbor's lawnmower winding down, to the wind in the oak tree soft, rhythmic, like breath. And for the first time in years, he let himself remember not the crash, not the hospital room, not the long rehab, but the before. The way sunlight fell across the practice room at the conservatory, golden and thick as honey, the smell of rosin and floor wax, the weight of a well-worn score in his hands, the sound of her laughter drifting in from the hallway. You're still at it? It's midnight. And him calling back one more run-through? I'm almost there. He hadn't been almost there. He'd been there, and life and its quiet cruelty and unexpected mercy had simply rerouted him, not ended the journey. Just changed the path. He went inside, washed the soup bowl, dried it carefully. Then he walked to the piano in the living room, the old upright, slightly out of tune, keys yellowed with age. He didn't play, just opened the lid, ran his fingers over the keys softly, no sound, like greeting an old friend after a long absence. Then he placed the library book on the stand, opened to page 1, and beside it the photo. She was. Smiling, he sat, didn't begin, just let his hands rest, ready, willing, waiting, morning. Came again. He arrived at the park early bench. Under the willow, its branches trailing like green curtains in the breeze. He brought 2 things. A thermos of coffee black, 1 sugar, and the leather case. At 9:58, the black sedan pulled up. Not the SUV this time. A modest sedan, slightly dusty. Carl got out not in a suit, but in a sweater and jeans. Carrying a paper bag that smelled of warm bread, he walked over, nodded. Mind if I join you? Not at all. Carl sat, opened the bag. 2 croissants. Handed one to Elias. From that little French place downtown. They open at 7. Worth the line. Right. They ate in silence for a few minutes. Watched a pair of ducks paddle across the pond. Listened to a child shriek with delight on the swings. Finally, Carl wiped his fingers on a napkin. I brought something. He reached into his coat knot for a contract, not for a flashy brochure, but for a slim booklet hand-stapled. No logo, just a title, handwritten on the cover, for the quiet ones. Elias opened it. Inside, 5 pieces, all transcribed for solo piano. All lesser known, no flashy concertos, no overplayed favorites. A gentle nocturne by Fanny Mendelssohn. A short, aching prelude by Florence Price. A lullaby by a Brazilian composer Elias had never heard but the melody. Even on paper felt like a hand on the forehead of someone feverish. Comforting. True. These aren't famous, Carl said quietly. But they're true. Written by people who played in the margins. Who made beauty anyway. He paused. I thought, maybe you'd want to give them a voice. Elias turned the pages slowly. Felt the weight of the paper. Saw the care in the notation, the dynamics marked softly, the phrasing suggestions written in pencil, like a friend whispering advice. No recording contract? He asked. Carl shook his head. Not unless you want one. This isn't about selling. It's about sharing. We'd press a small run, 200 copies. Give them to libraries, schools, community centers. No barcode. No price tag. Just here, in case someone needs it. Elias looked out at the pond. A duckling wobbled after its mother, determined, unsteady, full of trust. He thought of the woman in scrubs, the teenager with the guitar, the man who danced in his living room with his wife, long gone. He thought of the little girl who said, like my grandma's kitchen, closed the booklet, held it in both hands. Then he looked at Carl not with suspicion, not with hope, but with something quieter, stronger. Recognition, I'll do it, he said. Carl didn't smile right away. Just nodded deep, slow, like a promise kept. Good. They sat in silence again. Not awkward. Just full. After a while, Carl said, "One question, if it's okay." "Sure. Why that night?" "Why, after all this time?" Elias took a breath, looked down at his hands, knuckles slightly swollen, a scar near the thumb.
Ow.
The faint tremor that came if he held them out too long. "I didn't plan to play," he said. "I signed up weeks ago. On a whim, like buying a lottery ticket you never check." He smiled faintly. "I kept thinking, I'll go. Sit in the back, listen, maybe leave before my name's called. But when I got there, I saw the piano." Paused. "It wasn't fancy. Keys were chipped. One pedal stuck a little. But it was there, and it was ready." He looked at Carl. "Sometimes. You don't choose the moment. The moment chooses you. And if you've been carrying something long enough, you just let it out. Before it turns to stone." Carl didn't write it down. Didn't quote it later. He just held it like a small, warm thing passed hand to hand. They finished their coffee. Carl stood. "I'll send the first proofs next week." "No rush." Elias nodded. "Thank you." "For what?" "For seeing the music, not the man." Carl paused. Then, softly, "The man is the music. That's the point." He walked back to his car, drove off without looking back. Elias stayed on the bench. The sun climbed higher. Light filtered through the willow branches, dappling the ground in gold and green. He opened the thermos, poured the last of the coffee into the lid small. Like a shot glass, held it up not to the sky, not to fame, but to the quiet, to the years of showing up. Even when no one was listening, to the love that doesn't vanish. It just changes form like music, like memory, like hope. He drank, then stood, walked. Home. And for the first time in a long time, he didn't wonder if it was too late. He knew it was exactly on time. Winter came softly that year, not with a storm, but with a slow hush. Frost traced delicate patterns on window panes by dawn. The oak tree in Elias's yard stood bare now, branches like ink lines against pale sky, but the bird feeder stayed full. Neighbors started leaving small things, a bag of sunflower seeds tied with twine, a knitted cozy for the thermos on the porch. Once, a handwritten note tucked under the doormat, "Played your recording for my dad today." He tapped his foot. "First time in 2 years?" "Thank you." Elias didn't post about it. Didn't share the note online. He just taped it inside the cabinet where he kept Tyrite beside the honey jar. A quiet archive of grace. The small booklet for the quiet ones arrived 2 weeks later. Not in a glossy envelope, but in a brown paper wrap, tied with string. Inside, the 5 pieces, printed on thick, cream-colored paper, spiral-bound so it would lie flat on a music stand. No publisher's logo. Just a small line at the bottom of the back page, made with care. Share freely. He sat at the piano that evening, not to practice, not yet, but to listen with his eyes. He traced the notes with his finger, feeling the rise and fall of the melodies before a single sound was made. That lullaby by the Brazilian composer Cantiga Paranina started with a simple pattern in the left hand. It's like a rocking chair in motion. The right hand entered softly, like a parent humming in the dark. He could almost smell the baby powder, feel the weight of a sleeping child in his arms. He didn't have children of his own, but he knew that feeling, that fierce, quiet love that asks for nothing but the chance to protect, to soothe, to be there. He played it once. Just once, slowly. Let the room hold it. Then he closed the book. Didn't rush. Didn't record it. Just let it settle in his bones. A few days later, Dave called. The high school band director reached out. Said their winter concerts next month. Small crowd, parents, grandparents, a few proud uncles. They do carols, a jazz medley, student solos. Nothing fancy, but he asked if you'd consider playing. Just one piece. Whatever you'd like. Elias was quiet. The auditorium. Gym, actually. Folding chairs on the basketball court. There's a piano old, but tuned. They call it the Survivor. Been there since the 70s. Dave paused. No spotlight. No fancy sound system. Just you, the piano, and a bunch of kids who've been practicing after school for months, hoping someone they love will be in the audience. Elias thought of the little girl with the rainbow piano drawing, of the teenager who dug his guitar out of the closet, of the woman in scrubs standing in the theater lobby. Voice trembling, he says it makes the house feel lighter, said. Yes, not I'll think about it. Not let me check my schedule. Just yes, simple. Sure, like turning on a light. The week before the concert. He visited the school, not for rehearsal, just to see. He arrived after the final bell, when the halls had emptied, but the music room still hummed. Through the open door, he saw a dozen kids, maybe 14, 15 sitting in mismatched chairs, tuning instruments, laughing over a missed note, helping each other with sheet music taped together with clear tape. A girl with braids adjusted the strap on her saxophone. A boy with glasses tapped his foot silently, eyes closed, listening to something only he could hear. The director, a woman with short gray hair and a ring of keys, always jingling at her waist, spotted him in the doorway. She didn't gush, didn't introduce him like a celebrity, just nodded, as if he belonged there all along. You're early. Thought I'd see the piano. She led him down the hall to the gym. It was exactly as described. Basketball lines faded under years of scuffs. Banners from long past championships hanging slightly crooked. The smell of floor wax and teenage sweat lingering in the air. And there, near the stage area, eerily just a raised platform with a drooping curtain, the piano. A spinet wood scratched, one leg slightly shorter than the others, propped up with a folded textbook, but clean. Cared for, Elias sat. Lifted the lid, pressed middle C. It rang out clear, warm, a little bright. Not perfect. But honestly played a simple scale, then a chord. Then just for a moment the opening of Clair de Lune, so soft only the piano could hear. The director stood behind him, arms crossed. They've been talking about you, she said quietly. Not the video. Not the buzz, just the way you listened while you played. Like you were giving the music back to it. He smiled. Music's not mine to keep, she nodded. These kids, they think music's about getting it right. Hitting the notes, winning the solo. They don't know yet that the real thing, the thing that lasts, is how it makes people feel. Hey, she looked at him. You're going to show them. He didn't argue. Didn't shrug it off. Just closed the lid gently. I'll do my best. The night of the concert arrived, cold, clear, stars sharp as glass. Cars lined the street. Parents in puffy coats, grandparents with thermoses, younger siblings dragging sleds behind them. Just in case snow came. Inside the gym, the folding chairs filled quickly. Not a packed house, maybe 150, but every seat taken. Every face turned forward with that particular kind of hope only school performances inspire. Please let them be okay. Please let them remember their part. Please let them feel proud. The concert began with jingle bells played with more enthusiasm than precision. Then a jazz combo tried a blues riff, someone flubbed a note, laughed, and the whole group grinned and kept going. A flutist played a solo so tender, the room seemed to lean in. After each act, applause swelled, not polite, but proud. The kind that says, I know how hard this was. I see you. Then came the intermission. Dave stepped up, not in a suit, but in a sweater with a small glitter stain on the sleeve, a gift from the kindergarten holiday craft table. He held the mic, smiled out at the crowd. Before we start the second half, we have a special guest. He paused. Didn't build it up. Just said simply, some of you may have heard him play recently. But tonight he's here for the music. For the kids. for the quiet joy of getting it true, not just right. He looked toward the side door. Elias. No grand entrance. No spotlight sweeping the room. Just a man walking across the gym floor in worn loafers, hands in his coat pockets, stopping beside the piano. He didn't bow. Didn't wave, just opened the booklet on the stand. Turned to the first page and began, not with a fanfare. With that, Lullaby Cantia Perenina. The first notes were so soft, they almost disappeared into the air like breath on a cold window. A rocking rhythm in the left hand. A melody in the right, simple as a heartbeat. The chatter stopped. The fidgeting stopped. Even the little kids in the front row, still holding candy canes, sat perfectly still. This wasn't performance. It was presence. You could hear the creak of the piano bench as he shifted, the soft tap of his foot keeping time, the slight intake of breath before a phrase turned tender, halfway through. Something happened. A baby, maybe 6 months old, bundled in a striped onesie, had been fussing quietly in her mother's arms near the back, whimpering, turning away from the bright gym lights. But as the lullaby deepened, her cries softened, then stopped. She turned her head toward the piano, eyes wide, lips slightly parted, and then slowly, dreamily, her eyelids grew heavy. Her head sank into her mother's shoulder. She fell asleep to the sound of music made for exactly this. Safety, love, rest. The mother didn't hide her tears, just held her daughter close and mouthed thank you toward the stage. Elias didn't see her. He was deep in the music now, hands moving with a quiet certainty, like they'd been waiting decades for this moment. Not to impress. Not to prove. Just to give. When the final note faded like a sigh settling into silence, he didn't move right away. Just let the quiet stay. Then he turned the page, played the Fanny. Mendelssohn Nocturne, gentle, reflective, full of unspoken longing. Written by a woman whose brother's fame eclipsed her own genius, but who kept composing anyway in stolen hours. For the sheer love of it, then the Florence Price prelude, warm, spiritual, rising like dawn over a southern field. Music born of resilience, of joy that refuses to be buried. He played all 5 pieces, not fast, not showy, like turning the pages of a beloved book aloud after the last chord. He closed the booklet, stood, and, for the first time, not bowed to the crowd, but turned to the students sitting in the front row. Instruments in their laps, eyes wide, some with tears they didn't bother wiping. He nodded. Just once, a passing of the torch. Not with words. With trust, then he walked off, not toward the exit, but to the side, where the band director stood, arms crossed, jaw tight. She didn't say anything, just reached out and squeezed his forearm. Quick, like sealing a promise. Back in the audience, the applause began. Not roaring, not standing, just steady, deep, lasting. People didn't rush to leave when it ended. They lingered, hugged their kids, took photos not of Elias, but of their own children holding instruments, beaming. A boy who'd played trumpet earlier walked up to the piano, placed a single candy cane on the lid, red and white, slightly bent hand, walked away.